Welcome to the Miracle Mamas Show. My name is Ashley Sabali. I'm the founder of Miracle Mamas, where we strive to raise the bar on maternal health one step at a time and supporting and connecting women everywhere. With me today is a really good friend of mine, Lindsey Petlak. Lindsey is not only a pageant queen, a mom, extremely career-driven, and has her own branding consulting agency, which actually helped really elevate the Miracle Mamas brand. Lindsey, before I get ahead of myself, can you please introduce our viewers all about you?
Sure. Well, hey, everybody. As Ashley said, my name is Lindsey Petlak. I am your Ms. USA Prime Division 4, which means I'm over 40. I love Prime pageants because they really honor women in each of their different eras, because 20s are so different from 30s and 30s are different from 40s. And so it's nice to be able to shine with other women in your same age division. I live in Antioch, Illinois. I'm originally from far southern Illinois, so I've lived in southern, central, and northern Illinois throughout my lifetime. I am a teacher by trade. I taught for 15 years and am a Golden Apple Award-winning educator. But since leaving the classroom, I now work with education companies in a variety of different marketing roles over time. So what's really cool is I get to work with schools and districts and administrators and teachers all over the country. And in some roles I've had all over the world if they are global brands. So education is my passion, and it's been really a privilege to be able to serve education in many different facets and many different ways. I have one son. He is 12 years old. He just finished up 6th grade. We made it through the first year of middle school with flying colors. You know, that can always be a little bit iffy, but it was a great year. And I am a mother because of adoption. So I'm super excited to be on here and talking about all things motherhood and maternal health, because it's something that's very near and dear to my heart.
Thank you, Lindsey. So you know this about me. I love data. I think it's the grad student in me, but I want to kick this interview off with some data. So according to the National Institute of Medicine, we have Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, PCOS, is the primary cause of ambulatory infertility. It affects, my goodness, 80% of women with annual ovulation. However, 60% of women with PCOS are fertile, though it often takes a long time for these women to get pregnant. And the prevalence of infertility in women with PCOS varies between 70 to 80%. So with that being said, Lindsey, can you tell us your story that kicked off your maternal health journey?
Sure. Well, this goes way back to high school. I started my cycle very late. All of my friends had started their periods, and not that I was in a rush, but I was like, this is sort of weird. So I was literally between, I think, my freshman and sophomore year, and then my periods would come really irregularly. So I might only have like 3 per year, and I would never know when they're coming, which is not super fun, especially because I was in 3 different sports a year, and that's pretty inconvenient. So at the time, doctors didn't take super strong measures, and especially back then, we didn't know much about PCOS. We still don't know a ton about it in the way that we should. And they thought it could even potentially be that just my cycle was off because I was such an athlete. I was in sports year round, and sometimes that can affect your hormones and your cycle. But then as time went on, and in that case, the only thing that they can really do for you is put you on birth control. Even if it's not for contraception, it's just to regulate your hormones, try to get you to have a regular cycle, which was nice, but it doesn't really solve the problem. The PCOS is still there. It's not fixing it. So fast forward to attempting to become a mother, and I always just kind of had this, I don't want to say fear or worry, but just this little niggle in the back of my brain, like, I wonder if this is going to be a struggle, because I just knew that I didn't have a normal system like all of my other friends. So after trying for about a year, it wasn't working. I went in to see my doctor, and she said, well, based on everything that I had told her about my history, it sounds like it could be PCOS, but I don't physically present some of the external symptoms of someone with PCOS. So, I try to take really good care of myself. I always have. I eat healthy. As I've mentioned, I've always been pretty active, whether in sports or working out. And so some of the more like physical manifestations of PCOS, I'm asymptomatic of that. Probably my doctor thought mainly controlled by my lifestyle, which is great, but also has the flip side of that is it makes it harder to get diagnosed. So the way that they finally were able to diagnose me was through an internal ultrasound, where basically a normal healthy ovary, you have your 2 ovaries, right? Here they are. Throughout your cycle, you have follicles all around each of those ovaries, and one of those will develop and release a viable egg. So if you see that in an ultrasound, if you Google it, you can see it. You see your ovaries, and then you see one that has something growing on it, which is your egg, and then it releases. In PCOS, both ovaries look like pearl necklaces, where the follicles are basically all kind of producing an egg, but none of them become viable because it's not supposed to work that way. So that's a problem, obviously, if you're trying to get pregnant, if you're not releasing viable eggs. And I think a common misconception, even for me, was like, well, how could I be having my cycle if this isn't really working? That's how it is. So again, just a lot of women don't really know what's going on until they have a lot of issues with fertility. And having been in the world of education for over 20 years now, the majority of people working in the industry are women. And it is astonishing how much infertility there is. I mean, at least for me, like I have friends who have never gotten an answer as to why they can't get pregnant. They have no idea. Doctors cannot tell them why it's not working. That's a whole nother level of driving you nuts as a woman trying to conceive. For me, at least, I was like, okay, I have this going on. They also discovered, and this will probably link to our discussion on endometriosis later, but in that internal ultrasound, they also discovered that my uterus was misshapen, which is not good and not normal, because even if you do get pregnant, it can often mean the baby doesn't have enough space to fully form. So yeah, that's my PCOS journey. I now no longer take hormone pills. Somehow my cycle has regulated. I don't know how, but the PCOS is still there. I've just been able to come off hormone therapy through birth control, and I have a regular cycle now, which is great.
Yeah.
In my mind, I thought, well, maybe that means it's fixed. It's still there. I've seen it, still pearl necklaces, but I'm able to control it.
So can you see the pearl necklaces in the ultrasound, like in the image? Oh, you can see it actually. That's amazing. So what are the symptoms, or I guess the traditional symptoms that a woman might notice for PCOS?
Well, so the biggest ones are lack of period, irregular period, sometimes very light period, but it can also manifest with like excess body hair, pretty significant acne, which I did have breakouts during high school, but nothing that I would consider super significant acne. It can mean it's really easy to gain weight and really difficult to lose weight, because PCOS is an insulin resistant condition. So it's not technically diabetes, but if you kind of think of insulin resistance, your body isn't processing insulin in the way that it should. And so that can, cause a lot of weight gain and make it really, really difficult no matter what you're doing to try to lose that. So, there's some other symptoms and characteristics. Skin tags can be another one. So all of those can be small symptoms, but you also wouldn't necessarily, those could also be from a number of other sources or causes. So again, it makes diagnosis pretty difficult for a number of reasons.
And so you weren't only hit with the PCOS, you were hit with endometriosis too. So
Yes,
can you explain
Sure.
what are the symptoms there and what it is for people who may not be familiar with it?
Absolutely. Well, and the interesting thing is, I didn't get diagnosed with endometriosis until I was like 40 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
this was decades after the PCOS. Now that I know more about it, it takes an average of at least 10 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. Is a statistic. It's proven. It probably explains the misshapen uterus that they were seeing in that ultrasound. And so in between those times, like for me, maybe this will just fill in the gap. Adoption had always been something that I was super interested in. If you have PCOS, there are lots of different routes you can take. You can just keep trying, and sometimes it works. You can take hormonal therapy through injections, and sometimes that's enough to help produce a viable egg, and attempt pregnancy. But a lot of women end up going through multiple rounds of IVF. And so for me and for us at the time, adoption was just kind of a natural option for us. And that's not the case for everybody. I always say, listen, everybody's infertility journey is a very unique thing. For me, that was the path that just became abundantly clear. And so thank goodness, because my son is amazing. And, I have adoption to thank for that. So fast forward from like my mid-20s to 40, it's the middle of COVID. And I had always kind of had, especially as I started to get older, I felt like my periods got worse. It was becoming more painful, just different symptoms that seemed to really magnify. But, again, it's like, well, I'm getting older. I don't know. Your body's constantly changing. And when you're just used to feeling really intense pain associated with your cycle, you just kind of get used to it. You don't maybe realize that it's, I know it's so frustrating. I talk about this now, but it got really bad around the time I turned 40. I just remember we were in the middle of COVID. I was working from home, and the pain started getting so bad month after month that I would think I was either going to pass out or throw up, and I couldn't function. And that had happened when I thought back, like there were times where it had gotten that bad over the years. It was just becoming more frequent, if that makes sense. So like, instead of it being every third cycle, it was really bad. It was starting to get to where it was every other cycle, and then it was every cycle. And so again, I just kept thinking, well, I didn't even really think endometriosis, because I just would have thought, wouldn't I have been diagnosed with this? I've had an internal ultrasound before, and the fact of the matter is I have a friend going through this right now. She has been advocating for herself with multiple doctors for a long time now. And I mean, she's worn out from the process, and she's having all sorts of symptoms from what they have just now diagnosed her with as endometriosis, and it has taken her a decade. So when I started seeing these consistent, increased, terrible periods, I went back to my doctor and just said, something isn't right. Like, here's what's happening. And she said, this sounds like endometriosis. Let's take a look. They did another internal ultrasound. And what they could see this time, as time has passed, which this sort of connects back to, oh, your uterus is a little misshapen 15, 20 years prior. My ovaries, instead of them, sort of sitting like this in your body, they're now pulled backwards, like both towards the center of my spine. And the reason for that is endometrial tissue. So tissue, and there's not really good explanation for this, Ashley, because we don't know.
Do your best.
Somehow, but it somehow is able to magically sort of transfer from the normal place it should be, that you would normally shed that lining during your cycle, and it can somehow enter other parts of your body. And it blows my mind that we do not know how this happens to all of the women that it happens to. But once it does that, that tissue wants to attach. And so if you kind of think of it as creating a web inside your internal organs, it can attach to anything. So it can attach to your ovaries, it can attach to intestines, it can attach to kidneys, bladder, anything in that general, female area.
Yeah.
Which is not good, because it causes tension. It obviously, like mine was a prime example, where a lot of times they have to do sort of an invasive procedure to diagnose you if something isn't showing up. But my ovaries were pulled so far back, they were like, this is got to be endometrial tissue that has created a web and is causing this distortion. But it can also cause for women a lot of like bladder issues, because as your hormones fluctuate and you go through your cycle, that tissue still reacts, even though it's displaced in another part of the body, the way it would when you're going to shed your lining for your cycle, which is it's mind-blowing. And so it can create a lot of bladder problems. It can create a lot of back pain in women. Just so many different issues, on top of it's another major factor for for infertility, because it can cause scarring. It distorts the anatomy of your pelvis, as like I'm describing. It impacts your immune system functioning because, you know, it changes your organs are supposed to sit in the place that they're supposed to sit. And when that's getting shifted around in there, and because your body isn't functioning the way it should, it just has a ripple effect of a lot of issues. And there's not a lot of answers, and there's no cure. There's no real treatment other than trying to control it with lifestyle. Historically, they've done surgeries to remove that tissue from where it's not supposed to be. But the problem with that is that causes scar tissue, and endometrial tissue loves to attach to scar tissue. So it can actually compound the endometriosis for the woman if she, you know, has surgery. But there's just not a lot of answers.
I'm shaking my head because I know someone very close to me, a family member. And when we went to school together, I probably missed, this is no joke, I missed probably around 30 days in high school a year. And the reason why it wasn't for me, it was for the person who, this close family member of mine who would suffer from endometriosis. We didn't know, we knew, actually, it didn't take too long to figure that one out. Well, I shouldn't say that. It did take about 8 years. They thought it was one thing, and then actually it was in her, well, I'll back up. They actually did find out it was endometriosis, but they kind of hid it from her. So she didn't know until later, until she got her medical paperwork, when she switched OBGYNs, when she, you know, transitioned from her teens into her late 20s, you know, living on her own. And then she started seeing the paperwork like, oh yeah, we did find this. And she did have the surgery where I think it's by the belly button area. I'm not an ACP, but she did have the surgery to remove it, but then she created the scar tissue, as he described.
Yeah.
Excruciating pain this girl was. She started this around
Yeah.
15, 16. And I'm not joking. I would miss 30 days a year. I mean, I still got good grades, but I missed a tremendous amount of school because I had to take her home and I had to take care of her. And I was very happy to do it, but this is debilitating. And I watched it,
Yes.
and she had now I don't know if this is related, but she did have her uterus was a different shape.
Yeah.
And she's still going through a lot of complications today. And today she's, you know, nearing, you know, close to my age, which is 40. But it doesn't stop.
No.
So my
And
heart really goes out to you
yeah,
and to other women.
I mean, I can remember I had a college roommate actually that had horrific pain with her cycle. And I believed her, of course. And I felt empathy for her, but it wasn't until, and I had a lot of period pain, but not like I witnessed her having, where it was debilitating, where it would impact your daily life, your functionability. Until mine started getting worse and more consistently. Because it's like, if it happened when it would happen every once in a while, it becomes easy to forget, or like, oh, you don't want to think about it, right? But then when it was like, I can't ignore this because it's becoming more frequent, and then I truly understood, like, I have a high tolerance and threshold for pain. You can't escape it. Like, it is truly debilitating. And PCOS can be very debilitating too. I mean, that causes a lot of pain. Both of them can cause just extreme bloating. Like, you could literally have a flat stomach one day and look pregnant the next day. And because water retention is involved, and inflammation and swelling, there's just so much going on, and there's not a lot you can do about it. So yeah,
It's very hard. And I think the worst part of it, you know, watching through this, you know, this family member very close to me, is it was more about, you know, hey, put a hot heating pad on it. Or just, you know, take some Midol. And
right.
maybe that does work for some people. It didn't work for her. And I think it's really about having a voice and being heard, and that these aren't complaints. It's not something that's in your head that you're making up,
Right.
or worse. It's these are real symptoms. These are real medical symptoms that need to be addressed. And maybe there's not a magical cure today, but I think that young women, young girls deserve it,
Yeah.
of course, deserve to be heard. And I'm really glad that you're sharing this story. I think this is
Yeah,
going to
thank
help.
you for the opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing that really hit me was I shared a post about this. It was National PCOS month, I
Yeah, I
think.
saw that. Yep.
And one of my former students, this is aging me, but like a girl that I taught in second grade, she's now married and trying to start a family. And she reached out to me seeing that because she has PCOS and she's going through a lot of issues with trying to get pregnant. And it just reminded me, like, to me, this is just part of my life, right? And I kind of, obviously, I don't walk around with a sign on, I'm not keeping a secret either, but it just reminded me, I didn't really think about it when I posted that. And it just was a really good reminder. You never know who's watching or listening or might need to hear that. To, especially if they don't have other family members that have gone through PCOS or endometriosis, that you can try your best, but you don't really understand. And it also is just, and I know you and I have talked about this, like women just need to talk about these things more because there's no
Yes.
shame associated with this. There's not enough research about it. We're not talking enough about it to advocate for ourselves, but also just to have that sense of community and like you're not isolated, you're not alone in this. Um, and as far as the medical issues, it's not even just about the pain. I think that gets me so frustrated. And both of my diagnoses are more mild than other people that I know. So I feel very fortunate. Um, but both PCOS and endometriosis have significant implications and impact on other health issues, like significant health issues. So that's, I think, what shocks me the most. This isn't just about trying to get pregnant or going through a lot of pain when it's time for your cycle. That should be enough, even if it's just those two issues, right, associated with these conditions. There's serious medical implications for having each or both, and oftentimes they do overlap, um, both of these conditions, whether it's on how your body is processing insulin or excess weight that causes other health conditions that you just don't have control over it. You can, for some women, they can be eating better than anyone else they know. And if their PCOS is out of control, they just feel helpless. And then of course that has other health ramifications. For endometriosis, your organs aren't supposed to be caught up in a web and being
Right.
distorted. That's not good for them. That can cause lots of other issues. That can cause, inflammation, immune system issues. And so that to me is where I get sort of angry, angry about it. Um,
You have the right to be.
on top of infertility, I've watched so many friends just go through years, some of them more than a decade of absolute heartbreak and tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars in trying everything they can every step of the way, to get pregnant. And that alone is heartbreaking. I mean, like I said, going the route that I did was very challenging in its own way. We can have a whole other session sometime about the miracle of adoption, but seeing so many women I know go through that, it's just heartbreaking, inability to get pregnant, injections, the huge process of in vitro, having the in vitro not take, miscarriages, all of those things. But on top of that, these conditions have real health ramifications.
Yes.
And it's not being addressed. And it's just like a band-aid on top of a band-aid on top of a band-aid, trying to, keep water from busting through a dam, basically. And so that is something that I really wish, and I thank people like you who are bringing awareness to this and advocacy. We need more research. We need to understand this better. We need more options other than just take birth control pills. I have nothing against hormone pills or therapy or birth control pills, but that's not a solution.
No.
That's a band-aid to help you not start your period in the middle of a track meet, like me, or to just get a little bit more regulated, but it's not fixing these issues.
No, you couldn't say it better. And with this close family member that I have, I mean, watching, it's a huge domino effect with the health. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that happen between the age of 15 to close to
Mm,
40. And, of course, my fears of what's going to happen, when you're 50 or 60 or, as you as you age, because your body changes. But I think this is great. I'm very happy that and thankful that you came on. I know this is so sensitive. It's a sensitive topic. And I just want to see if do you have any advice for women who are going out there and might be experiencing PCOS or endometriosis, or who might think that they're experiencing it?
Mhm.
What advice do you have that you would like to share for them?
I think top three pieces of advice would be, sadly, you have to really fiercely advocate for yourself. And if you are with a doctor that is dismissing your symptoms, your pain, how you feel about this, then you probably need to get another doctor. And fortunately, I had a great doctor that always kept sort of in her back pocket, even before the diagnosis, like, it could be this. Let's see if this works. Let's do this test. Not every doctor is that way. And it still took me a long time to get diagnosed with both. So first and foremost, it stinks. It shouldn't have to be this way, but you have to be your biggest and most fierce health advocate. It just is the way it is. And do not hesitate if you feel like you are not being taken seriously to go and find another doctor or get a second opinion. Secondly, I think is don't be silenced or isolate yourself or feel isolated in shame or because this is a sensitive topic, because I know it seems like you're the only one going through this. You're not. If you open up about this to anyone, either that woman is going to have gone through it or they 100% have someone close to them who has, they can connect you. My ability to like cheer on my former student and say, you're doing all the right things. Let me know if you need anything. Have you experienced this? First of all, it gives those of us that have been dealing with this for a while or decades purpose. It feels good to help someone else and be like, I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have advocated for myself sooner. Here's even just something as simple as I recently found through a trainer who also has some issues in this
Okay.
area of life, suggested a supplement that I'd never heard of in all of these years, Ashley. Like 30 years of me having PCOS, never has a doctor ever recommended, and I'm blanking on the name of the supplement right now, but never have I ever heard of this. Ever. No one has ever recommended this. It's over the counter. The brand I get is called O Positive, and it's capsules made specifically for PCOS. I'm not a doctor. This is not official medical advice, but I will tell you, it has been life-changing. And I just thought, how has no one ever even suggested this? Nothing bad can come from this. It has made a significant impact. I started just taking those supplements a few months ago, and it's like night and day. But to be
Wow.
able to, make that suggestion to someone, or just to be able to say, I understand, like, here's your options. So first one is advocacy. Second one is don't be afraid to speak about this because it's going to help you. And then the third one I would say is you feel so totally out of control and there aren't a lot of easy, surefire medical solutions. So you really do have to focus on like your self-care, getting your rest. There are some great guides out there specifically for like PCOS diet or endometriosis diet. And I don't mean diet like losing weight. I mean nutritionally, foods that help reduce inflammation or that have been studied that people have put something together. Getting regular exercise, even though you don't feel like it. Trust me, when you've got, it's called endo belly, like, or PCOS bloat, like you don't feel like working out, walk or something, because it really, at least it's something you can control. A lot of this process you're not going to be able to control, but you can control advocacy for yourself. You can control speaking about it and trying to connect with other women that have gone through this, and you can control what you're doing in your daily life and how you take care of yourself. So that's my 3 pieces of advice.
Thank you, Lindsey. And if anybody had any questions out there or wanted to reach out to you further, is there a way that they could reach out to you on
Yeah.
social media, or can you
Sure.
share that?
You can find me on social media at Lindsey Petlak, so LindseyPetlak. I'll have to approve you as a friend, but just add me as a friend or message me letting me know that you saw this. You can also email me at lindseypetlakpageant@gmail.com. So same spelling of my first and last name, and then just the word pageant, no spaces, no dots, no dashes, just lindseypetlakpageant@gmail.com. And, I more than welcome you to reach out, because we all win when women band together for female and maternal health issues.
Thank you so much, Lindsey, for coming on this show. I hope to see you again. I love to talk to you about your adoption journey, and I think that will be very relevant for a lot of moms to be out there. So thank you so much. And everyone, I'll put the links below for Lindsey's contact information. And thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for this opportunity.